Welcome to Tales from Sector 9, your portal to immersive sci-fi audio stories. If you enjoy deep space action, rogue AIs, and conspiracy theories, you're in the right place. Tap like and subscribe to keep the adventures coming. Drop a comment and tell us where in the galaxy you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare for tonight's story. Red Genesis, the Lost Vault of Mars. The Ares Vallis stretched before them, a magnificent desolation painted in 1,000 shades of ochre and rust under the thin salmon-pink sky of Mars. Commander Kyle Vance shielded his eyes, the visor of his NASA-issue exploration suit automatically polarizing against the distant sun's glare. 10 miles back, nestled against the ochre cliffs, sat the gleaming silver needles of the Arclight flotilla, humanity's first permanent foothold on another world, a joint SpaceX-NASA venture carrying 100 souls poised on the edge of history. But out here, amidst the wind-scoured rocks and dunes sculpted by millennia of Martian weather, history felt immediate, raw, tangible. "Surface reading stable, Commander," crackled the voice of Corin Wells, the mission's linguist and comms specialist, his usual irreverent tone slightly muted by the static. Seismic sensors picking up some low-frequency rumbles, probably just settling strata, but nothing anomalous. "Copy that, Corin," Kyle replied, his gaze sweeping the horizon. He was a man carved from discipline and experience, an exobiologist by training but a leader by necessity. The ghosts of a past mission, one that hadn't returned intact, shadowed his thoughts even here, light years from Earth. Duty was his anchor. "Amir, Sora? Anything on the subsurface scans?" Dr. Amir Duran, the geologist whose infectious enthusiasm for ancient rocks rivaled a child's on Christmas morning, knelt beside a stratified outcrop, his gloved hand tracing patterns invisible to the untrained eye. "Incredible layering, Kyle. Aeolian deposits, fluvial channels. This valley saw water, real flowing water, for longer than our models predicted. But the ground-penetrating radar, it's odd." Lieutenant Sora Kim, the youngest of the quartet but a prodigy in systems engineering and resonance technology, adjusted the portable GPR unit. Her movements were precise, economical, her quiet intensity a counterpoint to Amir's effervescence. "There's significant interference, Commander. A dense mass about 50 meters down, metallic composition, but fractured, almost porous. It's scrambling the deeper signals." She tapped a control on her wrist interface, and the background radiation just ticked up slightly. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Kyle frowned. Anomalies weren't unexpected. Mars was a geological enigma. But scrambled signals and rising radiation hinted at something more complex. He checked the mission chronometer. They had another hour before needing to head back to the long haul, their pressurized rover parked half a mile away. "Keep monitoring, Sora." "Amir, anything visually distinct about that layer?" Before Amir could answer, Corin's voice cut in, sharp with urgency. "Commander, base is reporting a sudden intensification of atmospheric particulates southwest quadrant. Wind speeds increasing exponentially. They're calling it a Class 8, potentially 9 dust storm, developing much faster than forecast. ETA, 15 minutes. A chill, colder than the Martian air, snaked down Kyle's spine. Class 9 was unheard of, a planet-enveloping monster capable of blinding sensors, shredding equipment and lasting for weeks. 15 minutes? They wouldn't even make it back to the rover. "All personnel, immediate recall to the long haul, double time," Kyle commanded, his voice tight. "Corin, maintain comms link with base as long as possible." The sky, moments before a serene canvas, began to curdle. The distant horizon dissolved into a roiling wall of crimson dust, advancing with terrifying speed. The wind rose from a whisper to a howl, plucking at their suits, kicking up stinging clouds of regolith. Visibility plummeted. "Can't see the rover," Sora shouted over the wind's mounting shriek. "Follow my beacon!" Kyle activated his suit's emergency locator, a pulsing green light barely penetrating the swirling chaos. They stumbled forward, leaning into the gale, the world reduced to a maelstrom of red. Sand scoured their visors, the roar outside deafening even through their helmets. Static exploded in Kyle's ears. "Corin, status." "Link, gone." "Commander," Corin gasped, fighting for footing. "Signal, totally, occluded." They were cut off, blind, exposed. The long haul was likely already being buried. Panic threatened, cold and sharp. Kyle shoved it down. "Sora, that anomaly you detected, how far?" "Maybe 200 meters, bearing 075, she yelled back, her voice strained. "The radiation, it's spiking near there." "Amir, any surface structures? Overhangs? Caves?" Kyle scanned desperately through the blinding dust. "Negative. Just open ground and wait." Amir pointed, his voice filled with disbelief. "There! Look!" Through a momentary thinning of the dust, Kyle saw it. A shape, stark against the red chaos. Not natural. A perfectly smooth black tetrahedral spire, easily 30 meters tall, partially buried in the sand, its edges impossibly sharp. It seemed to absorb the dim light, yet pulsed with a faint internal luminescence, almost like veins beneath dark skin. It hummed. A low thrum felt more in the bones than heard. "What in God's name?" Corin breathed. "Shelter! Now!" Kyle ordered, pushing them toward the impossible structure. The wind tore at them, threatening to rip them from their feet. The air was thick with abrasive dust, visibility near zero. They reached the base of the monolith, pressing against its cool, unnervingly smooth surface. The hum intensified, vibrating through their suits. "There!" Amir shouted, pointing along the base where the wind had scoured away the sand. "An opening! A doorway!" It wasn't a doorway in any conventional sense. More like a section of the black material had retracted or dissolved, revealing a darker void within. Geometric symbols unlike anything Kyle had ever seen. Sharp angles, nested spirals, lines that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, glowed faintly around the threshold. They pulsed in time with the structure's hum. "Radiation is higher here but stable," Sora reported, her voice tight with a mixture of fear and awe. "The structure seems to be shielding us somewhat from the storm." The wind howled like a banshee. Staying outside was suicide. Inside was the unknown, an alien structure buried for potentially millions of years, humming with strange energy. Kyle looked at his team. Amir's wide, incredulous eyes, Sora's focused analysis even now, Corin's hand hovering over the sidearm they all carried but had never expected to use. His responsibility weighed heavier than the Martian gravity. "Okay," Kyle said, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt inside. "Sora, take point with the scanner. Amir, stick close. Corin, watch our 6, if 6 even applies in there. Weapons ready, safety's on, we go in, slowly." He took a breath, the recycled air suddenly feeling thin. Stepping across the glowing threshold was like passing through a thin film of energy. The roar of the storm outside instantly muted, replaced by the deep, resonant hum of the structure. They stood in a corridor seemingly carved from the same obsidian material as the exterior. The air was still, cool, and carried a faint metallic tang. Panels along the walls glowed with the same internal light, casting long, eerie shadows. The corridor stretched forward into darkness, the floor sloping gently downwards. The strange, fluid symbols flowed along the walls, pulsing softly. Behind them, the opening remained, a rectangle of swirling crimson fury against the sudden profound silence. They were inside. They were safe from the storm, but they had just stepped into a mystery far deeper and potentially more dangerous than any Martian tempest. The Vault of Tharis had claimed them. The silence was immense, broken only by the thrumming resonance that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the structure and the amplified sounds of their own breathing within their helmets. The corridor descended, its obsidian walls swallowing the beams of their helmet lamps almost greedily. The geometric symbols flowed alongside them, shifting subtly, rearranging themselves as if reacting to their presence. "These glyphs," Corin murmured, running a gloved hand near but not touching, a particularly intricate spiral. "They're not static. They resemble complex circuit diagrams, but also language, syntactic structures. See the repetition, the modifiers." Even in the face of the utterly alien, his linguist's mind was dissecting, analysing. "It's like Egyptian hieroglyphs designed by a quantum physicist." "Energy readings are off the scale," Sora reported, her voice hushed with awe. She gestured with her scanner. "The walls themselves are conducting power, flowing from deeper within, and the air. Trace analysis shows noble gases, argon, neon, but negligible carbon dioxide or oxygen, perfectly sterile, preserved." The corridor opened abruptly into a space so vast it stole their breath. They stood on a balcony, a precipice overlooking an abyss filled with impossible structures. Below them, bathed in the soft internal luminescence radiating from countless panels and glowing lines etched into the architecture, lay a city. An underground metropolis stretching further than their lights could penetrate, descending layer upon layer into the Martian crust. It wasn't built, it was carved. Towers spiraled downwards instead of up. Bridges of crystalline light arched across chasms thousands of feet deep. Buildings shaped like inverted pyramids, multifaceted jewels, and organic flowing sculptures clustered in intricate patterns. Walkways wider than Terran highways snaked between them, occasionally illuminated by floating spheres of light that drifted like captive stars. The scale was inhuman, dwarfing anything ever conceived on Earth. London, Tokyo, New York, they would be mere suburbs in this subterranean behemoth. "My God," Amir whispered, gripping the railing, his knuckles white even through the suit glove. It's Karnak meets Coruscant." "No signs of life," Sora stated, her scanner sweeping the panorama. "No heat signatures, no movement except..." She paused. "Faint energy surges like dormant systems powering up, sequentially, following our path." As if on cue, a section of the city directly below them brightened. Lines of light traced intricate patterns across building facades, and one of the floating spheres detached itself from the distant gloom and drifted slowly towards their balcony. "Okay, definitely reacting to us," Corin said, a nervous edge sharpening his wit. "Either it's welcoming the new neighbours, or the security system is waking up. Place your bets." Kyle scanned the immensity, his tactical mind racing. This wasn't just ruins, it felt poised, waiting. "Let's find a way down. Look for a central structure, maybe a control hub." They located a ramp spiralling gently down from the balcony, wide enough to accommodate vehicles far larger than their rover. As they descended, more lights activated ahead of them, illuminating their path, while the areas behind them dimmed slightly. The air remained still, cool, the resonant hum a constant companion. They passed structures that defied easy categorization. Some resembled vast public squares, empty save for geometric fountains carved from the same obsidian material, their basins dry but intricately detailed. Others looked like marketplaces or grand halls, filled with alcoves and platforms, silent and deserted. The architecture was a baffling fusion. The stark geometry of the exterior mixed with flowing, almost biological curves, adorned with those ever-present shifting glyphs. After an hour of descent, they reached a lower level, a wide plaza opening onto several colossal hangar bays carved directly into the cavern wall. Inside, suspended in Silevoy pole, guessing force field or stasis, that shimmered faintly, were ships. Starships. They weren't the functional cylinders or winged craft of human design. These were sleek manta-ray shapes of the same black, light-absorbing material as the city itself. Smooth, menacing, utterly alien, yet possessing a predatory grace. Some were enormous, easily cruisers or carriers, hundreds of meters long. Others were smaller, fighter-sized craft, docked along magnetic pylons that rose from the floor like metallic trees. These smaller ships were scarab-shaped, compact and deadly-looking. Several of the larger vessels bore marks, scoring, impact craters, sections that looked melted or torn. Battle scars. They fought someone, Kyle observed grimly, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm. Or something. Amir moved closer to one of the giant manta ships, his faceplate nearly touching the shimmering field holding it aloft. The design philosophy, it's consistent with the glyphs, utilitarian, yet deeply symbolic. Look at the wingtips. They echo the spiral motifs we saw in the corridor. Sora ran her scanner along the edge of the field. High-energy containment, stable but drawing significant power. And Commander, these ships, they're not just old. Radiometric dating from residual particles trapped on the hull plating. We're looking at dates potentially exceeding 50,000 years, maybe older. 50,000 years before recorded human history. While Homo sapiens were chipping flint in caves, this civilization was building starships and fighting interstellar wars beneath the surface of Mars. Deeper within the hangar bay, they found something else. A sealed chamber, the door marked with a complex circular glyph pulsed with brighter light. Sora approached it cautiously. There's a console here. No buttons, no screen, just a smooth surface with indented glyphs. Can you interface with it? Kyle asked. Sora hesitated. It's not like our tech. It seems passive, waiting for input but not digital input, more like resonance. She remembered the description of her specialization, resonance tech prodigy, an experimental field back on Earth, exploring harmonic frequencies and sympathetic vibrations as control interfaces. She'd always felt a connection to machines, an intuition about their inner workings. This felt like that, amplified 1,000-fold. Tentatively, she placed her gloved palm over the largest glyph on the console. Nothing happened. She focused, trying to recall the hum of the city, the flow of the symbols. She thought about the immense silence, the weight of ages. Still nothing. Then, a flicker of emotion surfaced. The grief for her brother, lost years ago, a sharp pang she usually kept buried. It resonated within her, a pure, clear frequency of loss and love. The glyph beneath her hand flared. Lines of light shot across the door, converging on the central symbol. With a deep, grinding sound that echoed the structure's hum, the massive door slid open. Beyond it lay not a control room, but something akin to a library or archive. Crystalline panels lined the walls, inert and dark. In the centre of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it floated a holographic projection, a star map. But the central star wasn't Sol. It was a binary system, 2 suns pulsing gently in the holographic display. And around them, worlds, dozens of them, linked by faint lines of light. One of those lines led outwards, towards another star system starkly alone in the projected void. A single, familiar yellow star. Sol. Corin stepped forward, transfixed. Is that Earth? Before anyone could answer, one of the crystalline panels on the wall flickered to life. Not with data, but with an image. a world of lush green jungles and towering bioluminescent trees under a double sunrise. Figures moved within it, tall, slender, recognisably human, clad in simple flowing robes. They looked peaceful, serene. Then another panel activated. It showed a different world, one ravaged by war. Shattered cities, orbital bombardments, figures in angular armoured suits battling amidst ruins under the same twin suns. A third panel flared, displaying Earth. Primitive villages, pyramids rising from desert sands, recognisable continents, and then images of ships, not the manta rays or scarabs outside, but different designs descending from the sky, figures emerging, interacting with the early inhabitants, Egyptian gods, ancient astronauts. They came from there, Amir breathed, pointing to the binary system. Fled something, a war, and they came here, to Earth, and to Mars. Kyle felt the weight of the discovery settle on him. This wasn't just an alien city. It was a lost chapter of human history, a cradle or perhaps a refuge. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't alone, and it wasn't even solely terrestrial. But the evidence of conflict, the damaged ships, the two contrasting worlds orbiting the twin suns, this legacy was complex, potentially dangerous. His duty, once confined to his crew and mission, now felt impossibly vast. He was standing in the heart of a 50,000-year-old mystery that redefined everything humanity thought it knew about itself. And the city, panel by panel, archive by archive, was just beginning to share its secrets. The weight of revelation pressed down on them, heavier than the tons of rock and regolith overhead. Humanity, seeded or exiled from a distant binary system, a vast Martian metropolis as a way station, Earth a later colony, or perhaps a forgotten outpost. The silent, watchful city felt less like a tomb and more like a paused recording, waiting for someone to press play. "Okay," Corin said, breaking the stunned silence, his voice attempting levity but betraying the underlying shock. "So, space Egyptians from a double sun system built Mars Vegas and maybe gave Earth the pyramid scheme. Got it. What's next on the tour? The casino floor? The all-you-can-eat nebula buffet?" Sora, however, was focused on the console she'd activated. The glyphs continued to glow, pulsing softly in response to her proximity. This console, it's more than just a door lock or an archive viewer. It feels like a primary interface node. The emotional resonance, it wasn't just a key, it felt like authentication. She tentatively placed her hand back on the surface, focusing not on grief this time, but on curiosity, a desire to understand. The holographic star map shifted. Lines brightened. Symbols flared around certain star systems. Text, or what passed for text in the flowing glyph language, scrolled beside the images. "Whoa," Corin breathed, stepping closer. "It's responding to you, Sora. Can you ask it something?" "I don't know how," Sora admitted. "It's not verbal, it's feeling, intent." She concentrated, visualizing the hangars, the ships. How do these work? How do they fly? In response, the archive panels flickered rapidly, showing schematics that looked like cross-sections of the manta ray vessels, energy flow diagrams, and glyph sequences that Corin instantly recognized as potential command protocols. Simultaneously, a section of the plaza outside the archive chamber began to glow. A circular platform rose silently from the floor, about 10 meters across. From slits around its edge, a soft, shimmering field similar to the ones holding the starships aloft flickered into existence. "Anti-gravity," Kyle stated, recognizing the principle if not the execution. "A transport skimmer." It activated, because I thought about flight. Sora looked bewildered yet intrigued. The city, it's interpreting intent through emotional and resonant frequencies. "Let's try it," Kyle decided. Caution warred with the urgent need to explore more efficiently. Walking could take lifetimes in a city this size. Sora, see if you can guide it. Corin, keep trying to make sense of those glyphs. Navigation, power systems, anything. Amir, document everything. We need to understand what we've found. They stepped onto the platform. It felt solid, yet strangely yielding. As Sora focused, visualizing movement, a low hum intensified beneath their feet. The skimmer lifted smoothly, silently, a meter off the plaza floor. With Sora concentrating on direction, visualizing a path forward through the immense cavern, the platform glided forward, accelerating rapidly but smoothly. Flying through the vault of Ares was like soaring through a dream of impossible architecture. They swept past the downward-reaching towers, crossed the silent chasms on bridges of pure light, and peered into vast, empty amphitheatres carved into the rock. The scale remained overwhelming, humbling. Lights continued to pace them, illuminating sectors of the city as they approached, plunging previous areas back into a slumbering twilight. Fountains remained dry, plazas empty, but the feeling of dormant potential was palpable. Picking up multiple larger energy signatures ahead, Sora reported after nearly an hour of travel. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she guided the skimmer. Massive power conduits converging, and chambers, very large chambers. They navigated towards the energy convergence, finding themselves entering a district that felt distinctly different. The architecture was more severe, more utilitarian. Platforms held arrays of unfamiliar devices that looked like weapons emplacements. Complex metallic structures bristling with emitters and lenses. They passed more hangars, these holding only the smaller scarab-shaped fighter drones, nested tightly into magnetic racks that lined the walls like dormant insects. Some of these drones also showed signs of damage, blackened hulls, fractured winglets. Suddenly alarm klaxons, deep and resonant, echoed through the cavern. Red lights began flashing along the walls, bathing the severe architecture in pulsing crimson. Glyphs flashed urgently on nearby panels. "What's happening?" Amir asked, startled. "Multiple systems activating," Sora cried out, the skimmer wobbling slightly as her concentration faltered. "Energy spikes across this entire sector. Those fighter racks, they're powering up." "Security systems," Kyle surmised grimly. Did activating the skimmer trigger a broader alert? Or maybe accessing the archive, Corin suggested, frantically trying to decipher the flashing glyphs displayed on his wrist-mounted interface, linked wirelessly to Sora's scanner. Whatever it is, the city thinks we're intruders. These symbols, they look like lockdown protocols. Threat assessment. From the hangar walls, several of the scarab drones detached from their magnetic pylons. Blue energy crackled around their forward emitters. They rose silently into the air, their multifaceted optical sensors focusing on the skimmer. "Evasive maneuvers, Sora!" Kyle barked. Sora reacted instantly, focusing her intent. The skimmer banked sharply, diving towards the intricate cityscape below as bolts of blue energy lanced past them, impacting the cavern wall with explosive force. More drones detached, swarming after them like angry hornets. "They're fast!" Corin yelled, ducking as another energy bolt sizzled overhead. "We need cover, and a defensible position." Kyle scanned the area, his tactical training kicking in. "There. That structure. Looks shielded, reinforced. Get us inside." He pointed to a squat, bunker-like building nestled between two larger towers, its entrance a heavy, glyph-marked portal currently sealed. Sora drove the skimmer towards it, weaving through architectural projections as energy bolts rained around them. The drones anticipated their movements, boxing them in. "The door's sealed," Amir shouted. "How do we get in?" "Sora, the console interface, can you access the door system from here?" Kyle asked urgently. "Trying." Sora closed her eyes for a moment, ignoring the chaos around them, focusing her will, pushing past the fear. She projected the feeling of sanctuary, necessity, urgency. The skimmer's console pulsed in response. On the bunker door ahead, the glyphs flared. Just as a drone lined up a direct shot, the massive portal slid open. Sora gunned the skimmer through the opening, and the door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the screech of energy fire and the sight of the pursuing drones. They were inside, plunged into near darkness, the only light coming from their suits and the faintly glowing controls of the skimmer. The resonant hum of the city seemed deeper, more ominous here. They found themselves in what looked like an ancient command chamber. Consoles lined the walls, dark save for the emergency red lighting. A large circular platform dominated the centre of the room, covered in dormant glyphs. "Status report," Kyle said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Skimmer is undamaged," Sora reported, her breathing heavy. "Door is sealed, heavily reinforced. External sensors show the drones are hovering outside, scanning." "I think I'm getting somewhere with the language," Corin said, pointing to his display. "The lockdown glyphs correlate with threat levels. We seem to have tripped a mid-level security response. But there are other symbols here. Command overrides, system resets, linked to that central platform." "Can you activate it?" Kyle asked. "Not directly," Corin replied. "It requires sequence authorization, like the archive door. It seems keyed to complex emotional states. The glyphs suggest concepts like sacrifice, resolve, legacy." Sora looked at the central platform, then back at the sealed door where the drones waited. She thought of the archive images, the peaceful world, the war-torn one, the ancient Earth. She thought of her brother, the grief still a tangible ache within her. But mixed with it now was a fierce determination, a resolve to understand this place, to protect her crew. Sacrifice, resolve, legacy. She stepped towards the central platform, placing her hand on its cool surface. She didn't try to replicate an emotion. She simply let her own complex feelings flow, grief intertwined with fierce protectiveness, fear woven with determination. The platform beneath her hand lit up. Glyphs raced across its surface, converging in the centre. Consoles around the room flickered to life, bathing the chamber in a cool blue light, replacing the urgent red. A low thrum filled the room as power surged. "Whoa!" Corin breathed. "System access granted. Sora, you just hotwired an alien command centre with feelings." On a large display screen that materialized from the wall, schematics of the city sector appeared, showing the drone locations, power flows, and something else. Something that made Kyle's blood run cold. Deep within the sector, far below their current level, another massive energy signature flared to life, far larger than the drones, larger even than the hangars. A symbol appeared next to it on the screen, a ring segmented surrounded by complex interlocking glyphs. "What is that?" Amir asked, pointing to the symbol. Corin traced the glyphs on his display. According to this, they called it the Sky Gate, the path between stars. They hadn't just triggered the security drones, they had started the activation sequence for a Stargate. The activation of the Sky Gate sent a palpable tremor through the command chamber, a deep resonant hum that vibrated up through the floor. On the main display, the ring symbol pulsed with intensifying energy, drawing power from conduits that snaked through the schematic like luminous serpents. The city wasn't just waking up, it was preparing for departure. Okay, activating a potential interstellar transport system while killer drones are trying to break down the door might not have been Plan A, Corin quipped, though his fingers flew across the holographic interface projected from his wrist unit, cross-referencing the newly accessible data streams. Good news. Sora's emotional login gave us significant system privileges. Bad news. The gate activation seems to have triggered higher-level defense protocols. As if on cue, the display shifted, showing external views. The scarab drones outside the bunker were now being joined by larger, more menacing shapes, detaching from previously unseen alcoves high in the cavern walls. These were angular, almost skeletal fighter craft, different from the manta shapes in the main hangars, clearly automated defense units. They began engaging the scarab drones, streaks of energy fire crisscrossing the vast underground space. Infighting? Amir asked, bewildered. Why would the city's defences attack each other? Corin highlighted sections of the newly accessed data. Hypothesis. The scarab drones represent a localised, perhaps sector-specific security system, maybe even one that's degraded or corrupted over millennia. These new fighters, they seem linked directly to the gate's activation sequence. A primary defence grid, maybe? Purging the lesser systems that responded incorrectly to our presence. Or, Sora suggested quietly, her eyes fixed on the unfolding battle. Maybe the scarabs were the original defence, and these new ones are something else, something left behind by whoever damaged those ships in the hangar. Kyle watched the silent, deadly ballet on the screen. Whatever the reason, it buys us time. Corin, focus on the gate. What does it take to stabilise it? Can we shut it down? Working on it, Corin muttered. The glyphs are complex. It's not just engineering, it's almost ritualistic. There are sequences tied to celestial alignments, energy harmonics, and this. He projected an image onto the main screen. The twin sun symbol they'd seen in the archive, now intricately linked with the gate schematics. Amir stepped closer, his geologist's eye for patterns finding purchase even in the alien script. The twin suns. Look how they're positioned relative to the gate symbol, and these branching pathways. It's like the map in the archive chamber. 2 primary destinations, maybe, linked to the 2 branches of, well, whoever these people were. He traced a flow diagram. It seems the gate requires alignment not just physically, but energetically, tuned to a specific destination frequency. Can you identify the destinations? Kyle pressed. Amir studied the glyphs, comparing them to the archive images. This sequence, he pointed, seems to correspond with the peaceful jungle world. The glyphs evoke harmony, growth, origin. This other sequence, he indicated a more complex, jagged set of symbols, matches the war-torn world. These glyphs suggest struggle, division, terminus. Origin and terminus, Sora breathed. 2 paths for humanity's ancestors. Commander, Corin suddenly shouted, power fluctuations. The gate activation is drawing immense energy, but the flow is unstable. The battle outside, secondary explosions. They're damaging some primary conduits. If the grid destabilizes completely, the gate could overload, the resulting energy discharge. He didn't need to finish the sentence. A blast that could power interstellar travel, unleashed uncontrollably within a confined underground city. It would vaporize everything. Kyle scanned the chamber schematics Corin projected. Power regulation nodes. Where are they? Corin highlighted several points on the city map, deep within the sector, some in areas now crawling with the battling drones and fighters. There are primary junctions, but accessing them is suicide. There might be a master regulation conduit accessible from beneath this command chamber. It's a long shot, requires bypassing multiple safety interlocks. If it stops this place from blowing up, we take it, Kyle said decisively. Sora, can you open a maintenance access way? Sora, already anticipating, focused on the central platform where she'd initiated the override. She visualized access, repair, stabilization. A section of the floor near the wall slid silently open, revealing a narrow, dark shaft descending into the humming depths. A faint blue light pulsed rhythmically far below. Amir, Sora, stay here, Kyle commanded. Monitor the gate. Keep trying to understand the controls. Corin, you're with me. We need your interface skills to bypass those interlocks. Into the scary glowing basement it is, Corin said, grabbing a portable interface kit, just like summer camp. Kyle clipped a descent cable to his suit harness and hooked it onto a recessed anchor point above the shaft. He checked Corin's harness, then nodded. Maintain comms. Let's move. They rappelled down into the shaft, the main chamber shrinking above them. The air grew warmer, thick with the smell of ozone and the thrum of immense power. Below, the blue light intensified, emanating from a crystalline conduit easily 3 meters in diameter, pulsing like a living heart. Glyphs swirled across its surface. Access panels sealed with intricate locking mechanisms dotted the surrounding walls. "Okay, Big Blue is definitely the main power line," Corin confirmed, connecting his kit to a nearby interface port. "Now for the safety interlocks. These things are ancient, Kyle. Layer upon layer of protocols." He worked quickly, alien symbols scrolling across his display. Almost got it. It requires simultaneous manipulation of energy harmonics. I can handle the sequence logic, but someone needs to manually shunt the feedback loop at the precise moment. That someone, he looked at Kyle, has to physically override the circuit breaker. He pointed to a heavy lever-like mechanism set into the wall beside the conduit, glowing with contained energy. "When I give the signal, you throw that switch. Timing has to be perfect, or it could feedback pulse the entire grid." Kyle positioned himself by the lever. It felt warm through his gloves. He could feel the raw power surging nearby. "Ready when you are, Corin." "Initiating bypass sequence. Now," Corin shouted. Glyphs flashed wildly on his display. Harmonic stabilizing. Almost there. Feedback loop identified. Kyle. And now. Kyle threw his weight against the lever. It resisted for a terrifying moment, then slammed downwards with a heavy thud. The pulsing blue light in the main conduit steadied, the violent energy fluctuations smoothing out. The overwhelming hum lessened slightly, becoming a steady, powerful drone. "Did it work?" Kyle asked, breathing heavily. "Grid stabilized," Corin exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. "Gate power flow is steady. We just stopped Mars from becoming a new asteroid belt." Suddenly Sora's voice crackled over the comms, tight with urgency. "Commander, something's happening with the gate. The alignment, it's locking, but it's not pointing to the origin world or the terminus world. It's cycling through other coordinates, unfamiliar star systems. One of them. Commander, it looks like Sol. It's trying to lock onto Earth." The revelation hung in the subterranean air. The Skygate stabilized but now cycling through destinations, potentially locking onto Earth. Back in the command chamber, Sora and Amir watched the main display in stunned silence as the glyph sequence representing the target coordinates shifted, momentarily resembling patterns Corin had tentatively identified as relating to their home system. "Is that even possible?" Amir wondered aloud. Could this gate reach across 50,000 years of stellar drift? The coordinates would be vastly different. "Maybe the system auto-updates," Sora speculated, her mind racing through possibilities. Or maybe Earth was always a designated waypoint, its relative position constantly tracked. The implications were dizzying. A direct path back home, bypassing the months-long journey via Starship. But a path that could also lead from Earth, or expose Earth to whatever conflict had scarred this city and its creators. Kyle and Corin ascended quickly back into the command chamber, the immediate crisis of the power overload averted. "Report," Kyle demanded, striding towards the display. "The gate stabilized, Commander," Sora confirmed, "but its destination lock is erratic. It cycled past origin and terminus, and seems to be searching. We saw glyphs correlating with Sol system coordinates for a moment, but it moved on. Now it's settling." On the screen, the whirling symbols slowed, finally locking onto a new sequence, one that didn't match origin, terminus, or Sol. A complex, unfamiliar pattern pulsed steadily beside the activated gate symbol. "Where does that lead?" Kyle asked, turning to Amir and Corin. Corin cross-referenced the glyphs with the archive data. No direct match in the archive worlds we saw, but the root structure, it shares elements with the origin glyphs, harmony, creation, but also contains modifiers suggesting sanctuary, confluence, renewal. Amir traced the unfamiliar stellar configuration depicted alongside the glyphs. It's a trinary star system, unknown from Earth astronomy as far as I know. Sanctuary. Could this be where they intended to go? A refuge beyond the conflict? The external view screen showed the battle outside had ceased. The skeletal defense fighters hovered silently, while the damaged Scarab drones lay inert. The gate chamber itself, deep below, pulsed with contained, stable energy. The path was open. They stood at a precipice far more profound than the physical edge of the city's abyss. Behind them lay the known, Mars, the Arclight mission, Earth, a humanity confined to a single solar system, ignorant of its sprawling ancient heritage. Ahead lay the unknown, a pathway across interstellar space, forged by ancestors fleeing conflict, leading to a potential sanctuary orbiting 3 suns. The choice was stark. We could try to shut it down, Corin offered, though his voice lacked conviction. Seal this place, hike back to the rover, assuming the storm ever clears, and report back to base. Let Earth decide what to do. And risk someone else finding this, Sora countered, or risk whatever threat caused the Terminus world finding us through this connection. We activated it. It feels like our responsibility. Amir nodded slowly. This discovery changes everything. The history of humanity, our place in the cosmos. It's not just data to be filed. It's a legacy. Perhaps a destiny. He looked at Kyle. The archives showed 2 branches of humanity, estranged, one possibly destroyed or locked in eternal war. What if the sanctuary world represents a chance for reunification, or at least understanding? Kyle felt the immense gravity of the moment. His duty, always his North Star, was now pulling him in multiple directions. Duty to his crew, to the mission parameters, to Earth. But also a nascent duty to the truth they had uncovered, to the echoes of these ancient humans whose blood might very well run in their own veins. To return to Earth with this knowledge felt incomplete, like finding a map to El Dorado and turning back at the city gates. He thought of the damaged ships, the defensive drones, the bifurcated destiny shown in the archives. Sealing the city might protect Earth in the short term, but ignorance was a fragile shield. Understanding the past, confronting the legacy, seemed the only path to securing a future. Stepping through that gate was an unimaginable risk, a leap into potentially hostile territory, or simply lethal emptiness. But staying behind felt like a betrayal of the very spirit of exploration that had brought them to Mars. He looked at his team, Sora, whose unique sensitivity had been the key, Amir, whose scientific awe was tempered by profound insight, Corin, whose intellect and humour grounded them. They had faced the storm, navigated the impossible city, battled ancient defences and stabilised a stargate. They were no longer just astronauts, they were inheritors. The Arclight mission parameters were clear, Kyle said, his voice resonating in the quiet chamber. Establish a foothold, explore, report, but no parameter accounted for this. He gestured towards the pulsing gate symbol on the screen. Reporting this second hand won't convey the truth, the scale, the implications, and it leaves this power, this pathway, vulnerable. He met each of their gazes. Our primary duty is to the survival and advancement of humanity. Right now, I believe that duty lies forward, not back. We have stumbled upon the grandest mystery of our species. We have the chance to understand our origins, perhaps prevent a conflict that stretches back millennia, or find allies we never knew existed. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. This is not an order I can give lightly. It goes beyond any mission profile, but I believe it's the necessary choice. Our report to Earth will have to wait. Our exploration continues. He looked towards the schematic showing the Skygate chamber. Corin, can you interface with the gate controls from here? Ensure the destination lock remains stable on Sanctuary? Aye, Commander, Corin replied, already working. Locked and confirmed. Sora, Amir, grab any portable archive data possible and essential supplies from the skimmer. We travel light. They moved with renewed purpose, the debate settled, the path chosen. Within minutes they were back on the anti-gravity skimmer, gliding silently through the now quiet sector towards the immense energy signature of the gate chamber. The chamber dwarfed even the grandest spaces they had yet seen. A colossal ring, easily 200 meters in diameter, dominated the space. It was constructed of the same obsidian material as the city, inlaid with glowing glyphs that pulsed in time with the structure's deep hum. The ring itself floated free, unsupported by any visible means, rotating slowly. Within the circumference of the ring, space itself seemed distorted, shimmering like heat haze over desert sand, but swirling with faint ethereal colours, blues, violets, golds. It wasn't projecting an image, it was the portal. Sora guided the skimmer onto a platform extending towards the base of the ring. The air crackled with contained energy. Looking into the shimmering portal was like staring into infinity. Kyle Vance stood at the edge, his crew beside him. The red dust of Mars felt a universe away. He took a final look back at the vast, silent city, the vault of Ares, cradle and tomb, testament to a lost epoch. Then he turned towards the swirling light. "Lieutenant Kim, take us through," Commander Kyle Vance ordered, his voice steady, resonant with the immensity of the step they were about to take. Sora focused her intent and the skimmer moved forward, crossing the threshold from the known into the utterly unknown. The shimmering light enveloped them, not blinding but cool, silent, erasing the obsidian chamber from view. For a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing but the swirling colours and the feeling of transition, of movement beyond comprehension. Then, new light dawned ahead. They emerged not into darkness, but into the soft, multi-hued glow of a sky illuminated by 3 suns, one golden, one pale blue, one a gentle crimson, casting long, strange shadows across a landscape unlike anything they had ever imagined. The Vault of Ares was behind them. The journey into humanity's forgotten past and uncertain future had truly begun. The gate shimmered, waiting, a path between worlds left open. They called it the biggest government secret you were never meant to know. Some had heard the name dull space tossed around conspiracy boards, but few people took it seriously. After all, who really believed there was a massive underground facility in New Mexico, run jointly by the US military and extraterrestrial beings? It had the ring of a B-movie script or a late-night radio show hoax, but that was before the files started to leak. Scattered breadcrumbs left by frightened scientists and well-connected whistleblowers. One of those whistleblowers was Dr. Julian Knox, who sent the first email to investigative journalist Cliff Nelson. Cliff wasn't your run-of-the-mill conspiracy blogger. At 47, he was too seasoned to chase Bigfoot sightings or shape-shifting reptilians. He'd cut his teeth on international war coverage, rising pharmaceutical scandals and high-level political corruption. The cryptic message from Dr. Knox intrigued him enough to keep reading. The email contained no greeting or introduction, just a string of numbers that, when deciphered, led to a location in Santa Fe and a single directive. Meet me, bring recording equipment, trust no one. The next day, a second message arrived, this time bearing an attachment labelled partial proofs. It included disturbing images, X-ray scans of skeletons that didn't look fully human, screenshots of subterranean tunnel schematics, and an audio snippet filled with inhuman screeches, echoing against metallic walls. The background static carried faint, eerie humming, as if it came from an advanced machine or perhaps something alive and breathing. Cliff's heart pounded in his chest. He had an array of sources within government, military, and scientific circles, people who owed him favours or quietly admired his audacity. But no one he'd spoken to had ever hinted at something like this. The deeper he delved into Knox's attachments, the more he suspected this wasn't a typical cover-up about funneling money or dabbling in questionable research. This was bigger, stranger, and infinitely more dangerous. Calling on an old friend in Santa Fe wasn't an option. He had no idea who might be complicit. If half the things in Dr. Knox's attachment were real, security measures around this dull space would be terrifyingly thorough. Paranoia pricked him like needles in the skin, reminding him that he might already be watched. In a single day, Cliff cancelled his other interviews, told his editor he was onto a major lead, and hopped on a plane to New Mexico. Under a moonlit sky, Santa Fe still looked deceptively serene. Old adobe walls and narrow lanes gave the city a timeless aura, the type of place people visited for art festivals and southwestern charm. But tonight, every crooked alley and shadowy corner seemed to hum with tension. Cliff arrived at the safe house address around midnight, an unremarkable old building on the outskirts of town, its windows dark. Despite the quiet, his instincts screamed at him to proceed carefully. He found the front door slightly ajar. The stench hit him first, a coppery smell mixed with disinfectant. Flicking on his flashlight, he stepped inside to find a scene of carnage. Broken glass crunched underfoot. The walls were splattered with something thick and dark. Upended furniture suggested a struggle, and in the flickering beam of his flashlight, he spotted bodies, 4 of them, wearing nondescript black attire. Their faces were contorted in death, bullet wounds blossoming on their chests and heads. They clearly weren't a bunch of amateurs. Military-grade gear was scattered around them. Night vision goggles, advanced rifles, something resembling an electronic scrambler box, but none of them looked like Dr. Knox. Cliff's stomach twisted. The horrifying thought occurred. Did I lead them here? He had no way of knowing. His eyes roamed the carnage. One figure had a half-torn ID patch that said Vance on it, a name he couldn't place at first. Then he saw the movement. Someone was still alive. Cliff knelt, ignoring the warning in his gut to check for a pulse. The man coughed up blood, grabbed Cliff by the collar and tried to speak. But all Cliff got were gargled words before the soldier's eyes glazed over. "Where is Dr. Knox?" Cliff whispered, as if the dead man could still hear. No answer came, just the sudden, chilling realization that the soldier's radio was still crackling with faint chatter. Another voice, calm and commanding, said, "We have one body unaccounted for. Sweep the perimeter." Fear lanced through Cliff. Someone was still close by, and they had the technology and numbers to mow down an entire safe house staff. Mind racing, he pressed himself against a wall and listened for footsteps. A distant thud, the squeak of boots on dusty floorboards. They were closing in. He crept down the hallway, passing more signs of struggle. Computers had been smashed, documents soaked in blood. He recognized Knox's name on a file folder but had no time to grab it. The voices drew nearer, echoing with lethal precision. Instead, Cliff swallowed his frustration and moved toward a back exit. He found a side window, cracked it open and slipped out. The alley outside was coated in darkness, broken only by the moon's glow. For a moment, he thought he'd made it, until a blinding spotlight pinned him like a deer on a highway. "Hands up, down on the ground!" a voice boomed. Hidden watchers materialized from the shadows, their tactical gear reflecting the spotlight's white glare. Cliff tried to pivot, bracing for a desperate sprint, but something blunt and heavy struck the side of his head. He stumbled, seeing stars. Then came a second blow, a crack across his temple that forced him to his knees. He tasted blood in his mouth. In the haze, he caught a glimpse of a tall figure stepping forward, features obscured by the bright light behind him. The name patch read MAJ, Kyle Vance. So that explained the patch on the dead man inside. This was the commanding officer, the one orchestrating the operation. "He's priority now. Take him to sub-level 7, Major Kyle Vance ordered, his tone clipped, unwavering. Cliff tried to protest, but the words died on his tongue as a needle pricked his neck. Whatever they injected felt like ice in his veins, racing up his spine, extinguishing both thought and movement. The world blurred and faded. As he collapsed onto cold gravel, Cliff registered one last flash of consciousness. The Major was standing over him, speaking into a headset. "Specimen acquired," Vance said, "preparing for extraction." With that, Cliff's world went dark, and everything he knew was about to be turned inside out. Consciousness returned in fragments, like shards of a broken mirror reassembling around him. Cliff felt dryness in his mouth first, then the icy cold of a metal gurney beneath his back. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting everything in a sterile white glare that made his eyes water. He tried to move, but thick restraints pinned his wrists and ankles, leaving him splayed out and helpless. His mind, still sluggish from the tranquilizer, struggled to put the pieces together. The last thing he remembered clearly was the safehouse ambush. A burning question gnawed at him. Where is Dr. Knox? But soon that question gave way to the more urgent reality of his own predicament. A speaker crackled above him, distorting a voice that seemed both human and something else. "Specimen 037 is awake," it announced, the coldness of its tone sending a tremor through Cliff's spine. "Vitals are stable. Begin Phase 1 inspection." Shadows moved at the edges of his vision. He turned his head to see men in lab coats, masked by transparent face shields, circling him with handheld scanners. One technician carefully pressed an instrument against his temple, then observed the device's readout. Another drew a vial of blood from his arm. Their eyes gave away nothing, clinical, detached. Yet he noticed small tremors in one of the younger lab assistants, as if she was battling guilt. "Where am I?" he croaked, voice cracking. When no one answered, he clenched his fists, making the restraints bite into his skin. "Let me go!" he shouted. A beep sounded. The restraints tightened automatically, as if triggered by his elevated heart rate. He inhaled sharply as the straps bit deeper. The overhead speaker kicked in again. "Specimen 037. Remain calm. You have been selected for an advanced program under the Dulce Protocol. Resistance is futile and will result in sedation." Dulce Protocol. Cliff had come across that term in Knox's data's drive, but only as a small footnote. He hadn't understood its significance then, how the words hung in the air like a sentence of doom. He was living in the very heart of the story he had been chasing, a top-secret installation known only in the murkiest corners of conspiracy circles. For once, he wished the internet rumours had been nonsense. Suddenly, the technicians dispersed and the lights dimmed. Sliding glass doors hummed open, and a tall woman in a dark lab coat entered, flanked by 2 armed guards. Her sharp features looked exhausted, eyes rimmed with the faintest smudge of dark circles. She didn't look at Cliff with cruelty, though, more like wariness. She pressed a button on a small console at the foot of the gurney. The overhead restraints retracted slightly, allowing him a less suffocating position. "Cliff Nelson," she said quietly. "My name is Dr. Andrea Elliott. I'm here to evaluate your compatibility." "Compatibility for what?" he rasped, though a fiery anger built in his chest. "What the hell have you people done to me?" Dr. Elliott hesitated, glancing at the 2 guards. One of them shifted uncomfortably, like he was in on a secret he didn't enjoy keeping. She exhaled. "We've made alterations to your system. It's part of an effort known as the Dulce Protocol, an experimental project combining human and non-human genetic material to create a new class of operative." The words knocked the breath out of him. He'd thought he was prepared for anything. He'd uncovered illegal labs, drug cartels, war crimes. But human-alien hybridization? It was a leap into a black abyss far deeper than he'd imagined. She eyed the readings on the console. I know how this sounds, but you're not the first. There have been others before you. Some survived. Many did not. And you? He growled, forcing himself to stare into her eyes. What's your role in all this? Are you proud of what you've done? A flicker of pain creased her brow. I'm not proud, but my hands are tied. Let's just say I'm not here entirely by choice. She keyed in a code and the gurney's restraints loosened further. Cliff managed to sit up, though his head pounded with disorientation. He noticed a changed awareness in the room. A strange new sense told him the guards were on edge, their heart rate spiking. He sensed their tension, almost as if he could feel the electricity crackling in their nervous systems. It was impossible, yet he knew it was real. I feel, he started, searching for the right words, different. My senses, everything's sharper. Indeed, the pungent scent of antiseptic stung his nostrils. He caught the faint hum of machinery somewhere behind a reinforced wall. Even the distant footsteps in the corridor resonated like drumbeats in his ears. Dr. Elliot nodded. Part of the modification includes enhanced neural and sensory capabilities courtesy of the the off-world genome. She paused, lowering her voice. It's not just about creating soldiers. They're looking for something else, an interface, a bridge between species. Before Cliff could respond, alarms blared through the corridors, red emergency lights flashing. A second overhead voice, more official, boomed through the speakers. Containment breach on sub-level 4. Repeat containment breach. All security teams converge. One of the guards barked, "We need to secure the subject." The other guard readied a tranquilizer rifle, but Dr. Elliot raised her hand. "Not yet. I need him coherent. We'll move him to a holding cell." They unlocked the final restraints, forcing Cliff to stand. His legs wobbled, still recovering from sedation. One guard shoved a set of black scrubs into his arms. "Put these on, quickly!" Cliff slipped into the scrubs, mindful of the searing stares around him. Through the lab's glass walls, he caught glimpses of other patients in a row of observation chambers. People hooked to IVs, some heavily bandaged, and others with visible mutations that made his stomach lurch. Elongated limbs, blackened veins pulsing under translucent skin, eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. He felt a wave of nausea. This was more than just unethical science. It was a horror show, a twisted carnival of half-finished experiments. Dr. Elliot grabbed him by the arm, guiding him out of the lab and into a stark corridor. Overhead, the lights continued to flicker red. He heard the hiss of pressurized doors slamming shut in the distance. They passed a sealed window, giving him a glimpse of another corridor. Two alien-like figures, Undanda and grey-skinned, skittered past with unnatural grace. Cliff's heart jolted. They were real, not men in suits, not an elaborate hoax. The rational part of his brain scrambled for an explanation, but the primal part just screamed, "Run!" He felt Dr. Elliot's grip tighten. "Keep your eyes forward. The Greys don't appreciate curiosity." The fact that she spoke about them with casual directness chilled him more than the presence of the creatures themselves. "What do they want from us?" Cliff whispered. She shook her head. "That's a question nobody here can fully answer. Even the generals are left in the dark. We suspect it's about trade, technology for genetic material, but it's always more complicated than that. They navigated multiple corridors that seemed designed to confuse. Cliff spotted signposts, sub-level 7 restricted biolab. On the walls were placards listing colour-coded clearance levels. He caught a whiff of industrial-grade disinfectant, the kind used to sterilise labs after biologically hazardous incidents. Finally, They reached a smaller cell block. Dr. Elliot keyed a code into the panel, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a compact chamber with a single bed, a desk, and a recessed overhead light that flickered ominously. Another occupant sat in the corner, big and muscular, head bowed. He wore tattered military fatigues. "Welcome to your new home," one guard sneered, shoving Cliff forward. "Dr. Elliot, you have 2 minutes to finalize your inspection. Then we lock this down." The door sealed behind them, leaving Cliff alone with Dr. Elliot and the mysterious occupant. Slowly the man lifted his gaze. A thin scar ran from his temple to his jawline. His eyes glowed with a faint luminescence, an unsettling effect that echoed Cliff's own heightened sensations. "Malik Rivera," the man introduced himself. "Delta Force once upon a time. Now I'm a lab rat." There was bitterness in his voice, but also a raw determination. Cliff guessed that Malik wasn't a man who scared easily. Dr. Elliot kept her voice low. "Malik was an earlier test subject, part of the same super soldier program." She pulled a thin device from her coat pocket. "Look, if you both want to survive what's coming, you'll need each other. This place is on the brink of a purge." "Purge?" Cliff echoed, dread settling in his gut. She nodded gravely. "They're shutting down the entire facility and disposing of assets. That includes human test subjects, compromised staff, anything that might be traced back to the truth. We probably have less than 48 hours. The overhead alarm cut out, replaced by an all-clear tone, but the tension was still palpable. Dr. Elliot quickly keyed something into her device, then pressed it into Cliff's hand. "Coordinates, passcodes, and a partial map of the base. It's not complete, but it might help." Malik stood, every muscle coiled. "Then let's get out while we still can." The corridor outside resounded with distant echoes. Guards barking orders, mechanical shutters clanging shut. Dr. Elliot handed Cliff a small inhaler-like device. "For your enhancements, if you feel them spiraling out of control, use it. It's meant to stabilize neural overactivity caused by the alien DNA." She paused, her expression loaded with guilt and urgency. "I'll do what I can to help, but you'll have to trust me." "I don't know if I can," Cliff admitted, but he pocketed the device anyway. Desperation trumped suspicion. She gave a resigned nod. "I'll be back soon, if I can." Then she hurried to the door, tapping in another code to slip out, leaving Cliff and Malik behind. Malik exhaled slowly, turning his gaze to Cliff. "I've tried to bust out of here before. Didn't go well. But you and I might have a shot if we combine forces." Cliff took a steadying breath, heart still pounding in his chest. "And let's not wait around to become casualties in their purge." He glanced at the door, then at the coordinates Dr. Elliot had provided. His body still hummed with unnatural energy, a cocktail of alien DNA surging through his veins. The only question was whether it would be their curse or the key to escaping dull space alive. The first step of any plan was recon. Cliff and Malik huddled in their cramped cell, reviewing the partial map Dr. Elliot had given them. It was a rough layout, a honeycomb of labs, storage rooms, living quarters, and corridors linking up to elevator shafts. The critical path led to sub-level 1, where an emergency surface elevator supposedly allowed quick exits during catastrophic breaches. But between them and freedom lay a legion of armed guards, surveillance drones, and who knew what else the dull space staff had cooked up. Cliff's new perceptions made the environment feel both overwhelming and strangely navigable. He could pick out footsteps from down the hall, sense the slight shift in electrical current when a door unlocked. Malik was no slouch either. Years of Delta Force training plus his own set of enhancements, whatever twisted science had done to him, made him an imposing ally. "We have to move soon," Malik said, cross-referencing the map. "They'll continue collecting test subjects, but once they're ready to wipe everything, they'll lock down the entire base. We can't wait." Cliff nodded. "Agreed. We should create a diversion. something that draws security away while we move. A faint smirk tugged at Malik's lip. I've got an idea. We head for the armory on sub-level 6. Last time they tried to dispose of me, I learned the codes. If we can sabotage a few supply lines, blow a few key doors, that'll set off alarms in multiple sectors. Cliff exhaled, an adrenaline already coursing through him. That's a plan. He tried the door's control panel, but it was locked. They'd need to time their escape for when the guards delivered the next meal or medical check. Sure enough, after about 30 minutes, a time that stretched like an eternity, the cell door slid open with a mechanical whir. A single guard entered, a tray of food in his hands, weapons slung over his shoulder. He looked bored, but only until he realized Cliff and Malik were waiting on either side of the doorway. Before the guard could shout, Malik grabbed his rifle and slammed the butt into his face, dropping him to the floor. Cliff snatched a stun baton from the guard's belt and jammed it into his ribcage, ensuring he stayed down. They yanked the guard's uniform keycard and comm device. Cautiously, they peered into the hallway. Cameras perched high on the walls, scanning for movement. Cliff drew on his heightened senses, feeling the faint whir as each camera rotated. Timing their steps with that rotation, they advanced swiftly until they found an access panel leading to a maintenance corridor. The inside of Dulce Base was a labyrinth of steel plating, flickering fluorescent lights, and large glass observation windows revealing labs that ranged from sterile to nightmarish. In one lab, they glimpsed an abomination that made Cliff's stomach churn. A half-formed humanoid slumped in a nutrient vat, twitching with spidery limbs that didn't fully connect to any normal skeleton. Instead of a face, it had fleshy lumps that seemed to shift independently. Technicians hurried around it, monitoring vital signs and ignoring the creature's silent agony. Cliff forced himself to look away, heart hammering. This was the future Denokius had been warning about. Focus, Malik whispered, noticing Cliff's distraction. Armory is down this corridor and 2 levels up. They ducked into a nearby elevator, using the guard's stolen card to access sub-level 6. As the doors closed, Cliff's mind drifted to Dr. Elliot. Was she risking her life to help them? Or was she just playing a game? For the moment, trust was all they had. A beep signaled their arrival at sub-level 6. The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. The overhead alarms had ceased for now, replaced by the standard hum of base operations. They crept forward until they found a large steel door marked Armory, authorized personnel only. Malik punched in a code on the keypad. For a tense moment, the display blinked red. Then it turned green, and the door slid open. Inside, rows of rifles, handguns, and advanced weaponry lined the walls, interspersed with locked cases of explosives. Cliff felt both relief and dread. They would arm themselves, but the base's security would respond in force the moment they unleashed any real damage. Malik grabbed a small duffel bag and began filling it with explosives and detonators. Cliff checked a row of sidearms, selecting a lightweight pistol that felt balanced in his hand. He also noticed a series of unusual gadgets, plasma cutters and strange tube-like devices with instructions in partial English, partial alien script. It made his skin crawl, but he grabbed one for good measure. We set charges at junction points, ventilation shafts, power generators, Malik said, strapping an assault rifle over his shoulder. It'll flood the base with confusion. We'll use that chaos to get to sub-level 1. They stepped out of the armory and hurried down the corridor. Cliff's mind whirred with the moral weight of what they were about to do. People, some likely coerced or unaware of the base's darkest secrets, could die in the blast. But if they didn't fight their way out, they'd be next. In a place like Dulce, the lines between innocence and complicity had been eroded to dust. At the first junction, Malik placed a small block of C4 near the main power relay. He set a remote detonator, then they moved on. Next came a side corridor leading to the ventilation substation. Each move was methodical, each step a gamble. They crept past labs where creatures shrieked behind thick glass, and offices where staff typed away, oblivious to the looming threat. Cliff's heart hammered each time they planted another explosive. Then everything went sideways. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with 3 security drones hovering in midair. The drones looked like floating orbs armed with scanning lenses and paralyzing tasers. They beeped in unison, focusing on the intruders. Malik fired first, unleashing a short burst from his rifle. 2 drones spiraled out of control, sparks showering the corridor, but the third shot a crackling bolt of electricity. Cliff felt a jolt of agony rip through him, forcing him to his knees. Pain flared across his nerves, short-circuiting his thoughts. But in the frenzy of adrenaline, something inside him surged. The alien enhancements. The electricity crackled but didn't incapacitate him as it should have. His vision dimmed for a second, then sharpened to a razor's edge. He forced himself upright, raised his pistol with uncanny clarity, and fired a single shot into the drone's power module. It dropped like a stone. Panting, Cliff stared at his shaking hands. They were still intact, though his muscles twitched from the shock. Malik stared at him, a mixture of awe and concern. Man, that was some next-level resilience. I can't even explain it, Cliff muttered. Let's not rely on it more than we have to. Alarms flared again, red lights spinning. A voice crackled over the intercom. Unauthorized weapons fire detected in sub-level 6. Security teams converge immediately. Time to move. They dashed through corridors, confronted by guards who fired on sight. Cliff's reflexes felt supercharged. Bullets seemed slower than usual, giving him precious milliseconds to dodge or find cover. Malik's strength was formidable, delivering lethal close-quarters takedowns with brutal efficiency. Together, they carved a path toward the emergency staircase. Outside a sealed bulkhead door, they planted their final block of C4. Malik checked his watch, set the timer, and gave Cliff a grim nod. All set. Let's get upstairs before we blow this joint. As they raced upward, the base descended into chaos. Doors slammed shut, klaxons wailed, and personnel hurried in every direction. Cliff glimpsed men in hazmat suits sprinting with canisters labelled biohazard, while scientists scrambled to secure data drives. Over the comm channels they'd stolen, frantic voices overlapped. Containment breach in Lab 14. Subject is loose. We're losing power in the main corridor. Backup generators failing. Exactly the diversion they needed. They pressed on, eventually reaching a storage area connected to a side route that led to sub-level 1. But as they turned into the corridor, a terrifying figure blocked their path. A heavily mutated guard. His face was partially hidden behind an organic mask fused with his own flesh, eyes luminescent and swirling with chaotic patterns. He let out an otherworldly roar, brandishing a twisted arm that ended in bone-like blades. Malik fired a burst at the creature. The bullets impacted, but it only staggered back, shrieking in a mixture of rage and pain. Cliff aimed the weird, tube-like alien device he'd grabbed from the armory, pressing the single button it offered. A beam of intense blue light shot out, slicing across the creature's torso. It howled, dropping to its knees as blackish fluid oozed from the wound. They sidestepped the thrashing thing, each step a reminder they were far from safe. Just before they crossed into sub-level 1, the floor vibrated as Malik pressed the detonator. A thunderous series of explosions rippled through the base. Lights flickered, sections of the corridor collapsed, and the overhead speaker crackled before dying out. For a brief moment, everything was chaos incarnate. In that chaos lay their hope of freedom. They found a hatch leading to a service tunnel. Malik pried it open, and they crawled through the tight space, hearts pounding, each of them aware that Dulce Base wouldn't give up its secrets or its captives easily. The service tunnel opened into a dimly lit maintenance shaft, the air thick with dust and the stench of burning wires. Cliff's heart hammered in his chest. While the bombs had created a distraction, they also made the facility unstable. Sparks fizzled from broken conduits, and overhead pipes hissed with escaping steam. If they took a wrong turn, they risked being crushed by collapsing ceilings or roasted in a sudden burst of superheated air. Malik led the way, pausing to consult the stolen map. "We should be close to the transport tunnel that runs parallel to the main hall." His voice was hushed but tinged with urgency. From somewhere above, a mechanical grinding noise resonated, followed by a distant roar, like metal being torn asunder. Cliff grimaced, imagining the monstrous experiments that might be on the loose now that sections of the base were compromised. Crouching low, they moved deeper into the tunnel until they found a grated door. On the other side was a narrow catwalk overlooking a subterranean transport track. Flatbed carts and cargo shuttles were parked on rails that stretched into darkness. Beyond them, a massive freight elevator led up toward the hidden hangar, rumoured to exist beneath Archuleta Mesa. "That's our ticket," Malik said, pointing to a small cargo shuttle that looked operational. "We'll ride it toward the hangar, then take the elevator the rest of the way." Cliff nodded, assuming we can power it up. He spotted a control panel near the tracks. Let's hope those charges didn't fry everything. They pried open the grated door. Cliff jumped down onto the rails, wincing at the jolt of pain in his still recovering muscles. The area was eerily silent, save for a low hum of emergency generators. A quick glance around showed no immediate guards. Most were probably battling the meltdown in other sections. Malik rushed to the shuttle's cockpit, flicking switches. After a tense moment, lights on the console winked to life, accompanied by a subdued electric whir. Cliff exhaled in relief. "We're good to go." He was about to climb aboard when the overhead alarms came back to life with a vengeance. A harsh siren echoed through the tunnel. "Security override initiated. All personnel secure priority assets and prepare for purge protocols." "They're speeding up the timeline," Malik hissed, eyes narrowing. "We gotta move." Cliff scanned the area. Across the tunnel, a massive blast door began descending, an obvious attempt to seal them in. "Floor it," he shouted, leaping onto the shuttle. Malik slammed the throttle, and the cargo shuttle lurched forward with surprising speed. The wheels squealed on the rails as they hurtled toward the narrowing gap beneath the blast door. For an instant, Cliff was sure they'd be sliced in half, but the shuttle skidded through just as the door slammed shut behind them. A deafening clang reverberated, followed by a rush of stale air that nearly knocked Cliff off balance. They were now in a narrower corridor leading to the freight elevator. The overhead lighting flickered, revealing graffiti scrawled along the walls in a language Cliff couldn't decipher. Perhaps it was alien script. The tension in his chest didn't let up for a second. They were so close to the rumoured exit, but so much could still go wrong. The shuttle slowed to a halt beside the freight elevator. It was colossal, capable of lifting entire trucks. Cliff jumped out first, scanning for any signs of life. The place looked deserted. No guards, no staff. Just flickering lights and the drone of distant machinery. "Let's get this thing powered," Malik said, pointing to the control panel on the wall. He approached it warily, half expecting a booby trap or a guard to pop out. As he flipped switches, the elevator groaned to life. A cage-like barrier retracted, revealing a broad platform. Cliff and Malik hurried onto it, and Malik keyed in the command to ascend. The elevator rattled, then began its slow climb upward. Halfway up, the elevator shuddered to a stop so abruptly that Cliff lurched, nearly losing his footing. Red lights flashed on the control panel. "Damn it," Malik cursed. "They've cut power to the upper levels." Cliff clenched his fists, frustration boiling over. "We're stuck between floors in the middle of a meltdown?" Before Malik could answer, a hail of gunfire pinged against the metal walls. They ducked, pressing themselves flat against the floor. From the open sides of the elevator shaft, Black Ops soldiers had begun rappelling down ropes, weapons trained on them. One voice boomed, Stand down or we'll light you up! Malik's jaw tightened. He fired a burst at the rope lines, severing 2 of them. Soldiers tumbled screaming into the depths below. Another soldier returned fire, ricocheting bullets off the elevator's frame. Cliff's alien-enhanced reflexes flared. He snatched up the bizarre alien tube weapon again, but it sputtered, maybe drained from earlier use. With no time to figure it out, he resorted to his pistol, placing careful shots to keep the soldiers at bay. The elevator shaft turned into a war zone, muzzle flashes illuminating the gloom. Amidst the chaos, a familiar voice echoed from above. "Hold your fire! We need the specimen alive!" Cliff recognized Major Kyle Vance's commanding tone. Goosebumps prickled his arms. Malik snarled, pointing his weapon upward. But Vance tossed a flashbang into the open shaft. It detonated, unleashing a blinding light and piercing ring. Cliff's enhanced senses went haywire and pain tore through his head. He dropped his gun, clutching his skull as white noise roared in his ears. When his vision cleared, soldiers in tactical gear descended onto the elevator platform, rifles pressed against Cliff and Malik. They were trapped, cornered on all sides. Major Vance lowered himself from the rope, landing with predatory grace. His face was stone cold, no hint of triumph or regret, just duty. "Malik Rivera," he said flatly, shifting his attention to the hulking figure. "I expected better from you. I see the enhancements have kept you resilient." Then his gaze settled on Cliff. "And Mr. Nelson, our star journalist, you've caused quite the commotion." Cliff's mind reeled, searching for any advantage. None was apparent. He could feel the tension radiating from Malik, who looked ready to charge even though the odds were impossible. Suddenly, a savage roar echoed through the shaft, something inhuman. The next moment, one of the half-mutated test subjects came crashing down from above, landing on a group of soldiers. Gunfire erupted. Screams tore through the air. The monstrous creature, a writhing mass of flesh and bony protrusions, slashed with clawed appendages, eviscerating 2 men instantly. Seizing the opening, Malik grabbed Cliff's arm. "Go!" He charged forward, tackling 2 stunned soldiers. Cliff dove for the edge of the elevator, found a ladder built into the shaft's side, and scrambled to cling onto it. Bullets whizzed overhead, some striking the creature as it flailed. The entire platform rocked from the struggle, sparks flying from cut cables. Malik followed Cliff up the ladder, launching himself onto the rungs just as the feral experiment tore into another soldier. Major Vance cursed, stepping back while trying to steady his aim. Cliff spared one glance down. Vance's expression burned with anger as he levelled his rifle at the creature. Then the elevator platform jerked violently, sending men and monster alike plummeting into the darkness. "Malik, climb!" Cliff shouted. They ascended the ladder, adrenaline surging. At last they reached an access panel, led into another corridor. Malik kicked it open, and they hauled themselves inside, collapsing onto the cold floor. Panting, battered, but alive. They found themselves in a wide hallway lined with support beams and sealed doors. Overhead, flickering fluorescent lights revealed a sign. Sub-level 1. Exit access. Relief flooded Cliff. They were near the surface elevator now. Cautiously they limped forward, rounding a corner until they reached the final set of blast doors. But as they approached, the doors hissed open, revealing Major Vance and a team of Black Ops soldiers. Blood stained Vance's uniform, and his left arm hung at an odd angle, yet his eyes were cold as ever. "Stand down," he demanded, voice echoing in the corridor. Rifles trained on Cliff and Malik, fingers on triggers. Malik levelled his own rifle, though he was outnumbered. Cliff's heart pounded. This was a standoff with no easy escape. The last barrier between them and freedom, blocked by the relentless, well-trained operatives. Then something in Malik snapped. His eyes glowed with a frenzied light. Before Cliff could stop him, he let out a guttural battle cry and charged. Gunfire exploded through the corridor, strobing everything in flashes. Malik took multiple hits but kept going, fueled by the same alien enhancements that had saved Cliff earlier. He crashed into the line of soldiers, scattering them like bowling pins. Cliff seized the moment, spotting a control console on the wall. He sprinted for it under a hail of bullets. Pain scorched his shoulder as a round grazed him, but he managed to slam his hand onto the emergency override. The final blast doors behind Vance began to open, revealing the long-sought elevator to the surface. Malik, bullet-ridden and gasping, turned to Cliff with a savage grin. "Go! Get out of here!" he roared, bashing another guard aside. With his last ounce of strength, he roared like a berserker, grappling multiple enemies at once, giving Cliff the only chance they had. Cliff felt anguish at leaving him behind, but Malik's sacrifice was unmistakable. With tears stinging his eyes, Cliff lunged through the opening blast doors. He slammed the control panel on the opposite side, shutting them behind him, sealing off the corridor. Outside, the sounds of fierce combat continued, gunfire, shouts, and Malik's defiant roar. Cliff turned to face the elevator. It stood ready, the indicator lights reading surface. He stumbled inside, blood trickling down his arm. Another control panel, more buttons. With trembling fingers, he activated the lift. The doors slid shut and the car began its ascent, leaving the horrors of the subterranean labyrinth behind. The elevator ride was agonizingly slow. Cliff's wounded shoulder throbbed, and flashes of memory darted through his mind. Dr. Knox's cryptic warnings, the ghastly experiments, Malik's sacrifice. He clutched the data drive Dr. Knox had sent him, an item he'd stashed in a hidden pocket when everything went downhill. If he made it out, this was proof. No one could sweep this under the rug if he showed it to the world. At last, the elevator ground to a stop. The doors opened to a cavernous hangar dimly lit by overhead floodlights. A bitter desert breeze wafted in from an open ramp, along with a sliver of night sky glinting with stars. Cliff nearly wept at the sight. He was so close to freedom. But the hangar wasn't empty. Rows of sleek, futuristic aircraft lined the space, some human-made, others bearing the eerie curves and glowing panels that whispered of alien tech. Guards patrolled the perimeter. A single door on the far side read exit, presumably leading to the desert outside. If not for the bullet wound and the exhaustion gripping every muscle, Cliff might have tried to slip past them unnoticed. But Major Vance's men would be on his heels soon. Stealth was no longer an option. He scanned the lineup of vehicles until he spotted something he recognized. A US military VTOL, parked near fueling stations. A sign identified it as V292 Harrier X, an advanced vertical takeoff craft. Cliff's adrenaline surged. If he could get that airborne, he could outrun any foot soldiers. With his newly heightened reflexes, maybe, just maybe, he could pilot the damn thing. Ducking behind crates, he made his way toward the VTOL. The guards were at the opposite end of the hangar, apparently more focused on the meltdown happening below. He clambered into the cockpit, searching for the ignition or startup sequence. His trembling fingers found a biometric scanner, which beeped red, denying him access. "Great," he muttered. "Of course." He fished through the cockpit compartments, hoping for a key override or code. Time was running out. Then he remembered Elliot's data device. Could it do more than just store coordinates? He plugged it into the craft's console. The screen flashed, displaying lines of code. After a tense few seconds, it beeped again, this time turning green. Access granted. The computerized voice resonated in the cockpit. The craft whirred to life, panels lighting up. Cliff exhaled relief so palpable it nearly buckled him. Outside, alarm klaxons abruptly grew louder, echoing from an open shaft at the hangar's far end. Soldiers spilled in, guns drawn. They spotted the running VTOL and converged. Cliff's hands flew across the controls, guided partly by training he'd picked up as an embedded journalist with military units, and partly by the surge of alien-coded knowledge pulsing in his brain. He realised with eerie clarity he understood this machine better than he should, as if the alien DNA was translating the technology for him on the fly. The VTOL's engines rumbled, thrusters angled downward. Bullets pinged off the armoured hull, Cliff's senses hyper-focused. He read the lines of trajectory in the soldier's aim, weaving in his seat as if physically dodging bullets. The thrusters roared, and the craft lifted off in a plume of exhaust. The hangar's overhead doors were wide open, revealing a star-dappled sky. Cliff nosed the VTOL upward, slipping through the gap just as tracer fire chased him into the night. A wave of chaotic freedom swept over him. The desert stretched out below in an endless black plain, only occasional pinpricks of light marking roads or small towns. He risked a glance at the cockpit's radar. Blips closed in from behind, most likely drone fighters or pursuit craft. The base was pulling out all stops to keep him from escaping. Cliff gritted his teeth, throttle wide open. The VTOL soared into a steep climb. The first wave of drone fighters erupted from the hangar, sleek shapes backlit by the moon. They accelerated with inhuman agility, weaving into formation behind Cliff. Their weapons glowed ominously, locking onto his craft. Panic flared, but again his enhancements kicked in. He spotted an array of advanced countermeasures in the Harrier X's system. Chaff bursts, directed energy pulses, maneuvers that normal human reflexes couldn't possibly execute in time. He twisted the craft in a near-impossible roll, dodging 2 missiles that whooshed past. Then he triggered a chaff cloud that caused a third missile to detonate prematurely. The fiery explosion lit the desert sky. Cliff prayed no innocent towns were below to witness this aerial nightmare. The dogfight grew more intense. One drone soared overhead, peppering him with pulse blasts. Another looped under, attempting to flank. Cliff clenched the stick, adrenaline coursing. The craft soared into a harrowing barrel roll, flipping above the second drone. He hammered the trigger, releasing a barrage of armour-piercing rounds. The drone disintegrated in a spray of sparks. His luck couldn't hold forever, though. The pursuit craft had an advantage in numbers and advanced weaponry. A well-timed pulse blast smashed into the VTOL's rear thrusters, sending him spinning. Cockpit alarms wailed. Cliff fought the controls, forcing the Harrier X into a stabilizing loop. He dove low, hugging the desert floor, hoping to use the terrain for cover. Miraculously, the drones faltered, maybe losing him in the darkness. It gave him a narrow window to push the thrusters to maximum, heading west, away from the base. It took everything he had to keep the battered VTOL stable. The instrument panel flickered, warning lights ablaze. He half expected the entire craft to burst into flames. Eventually, the radar showed the drones falling back, possibly recalled or out of range. Cliff's shoulders sagged. He angled north, remembering Dr. Elliott's final words. They've already started deploying the first wave. It's bigger than you know. Her voice echoed in his mind, stirring dread. If Dulcie Base was just one node in a global network, a single victory here wouldn't stop the monstrous plan. The Harrier X sputtered, forcing him to make an emergency landing in a rocky clearing miles from the nearest road. He brought the craft down rough, bouncing against the desert ground. When it finally skidded to a halt, Cliff sat there, catching his breath. Exhaustion weighed heavily on him. A single beep from the console indicated the fuel was nearly depleted, the thrusters heavily damaged. Struggling out of the cockpit, Cliff stared at the star-filled sky. For a fleeting moment, the quiet was so absolute, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then he reached for his phone, a device he'd stowed away in a pocket. No signal. He needed to get word out, but the desert night wasn't going to make that easy. Pain flared in his shoulder, and he realised the bullet graze was worse than he'd thought. He tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and fashioned a makeshift bandage. His thoughts turned to Dr. Andrea Elliott, to Malik Rivera's last stand. to Dr. Knox, who had vanished before any of this truly began. Am I the only one left who can tell the story? He wondered bitterly. It took him until dawn to hike to a tiny highway rest stop. Along the way, he quietly marvelled at his own stamina. The alien enhancement still hummed within him, though overshadowed by pain and fatigue. By the time the first rays of sun crept over the horizon, he found a payphone outside a dusty gas station. He called the only number he could think of, a contact in an underground journalist network that specialised in covert leaks. Voice shaky, he gave them the barest details. "Get me a secure line. I've got a story bigger than anything we ever imagined." Days later, Cliff was holed up in a safe house in the southwestern desert. He transmitted to Knox data to international news outlets. He included photos, x-rays, laboratory logs, everything needed to piece together the truth about Dull Space. Then he waited, uncertain if anyone would believe it. A few smaller outlets picked it up, followed by an explosion of coverage on conspiracy forums. But mainstream media was suspiciously silent. It was as if some invisible hand was blocking the story from major platforms, just as it had always done. At midnight, a messenger arrived with a sealed envelope. Cliff opened it, finding only a slip of paper bearing coordinates that pointed to a remote region in the Rockies. Written underneath, in neat official handwriting, was, "Dulce is just the beginning. We need to talk. General Hamilton." Cliff's heart drummed in his chest. Was this a trap? Or a genuine high-ranking officer willing to blow the lid on more than just Dulce? He clenched his fists, recalling Dr. Elliot's dying words. "They've already started deploying the first wave. It's bigger than you know." The faint neon glow of a motel sign flickered through the window, painting the room in shifting shades of red. He had a choice: walk away now and try to disappear, or follow this lead deeper into the hidden war. There was really no choice at all. Cliff had seen too much, been changed in ways he couldn't reverse. The journalist in him demanded answers, demanded justice. The next morning he packed up his battered equipment, the data drive, and whatever little remained of his old life, setting out towards those mysterious new coordinates. In the back of his mind, a single certainty loomed. Dull Space was just one front in a war about to spread across the globe, post-human war for control, survival, and the future of species on Earth. And so the Dulce Protocol ended here, for now, but the real battle was only just beginning.